back to another late night update. I'm your host, Dean Ryan. Well, tonight we're going to have a really in-depth look of the events that are developing and underway across the globe as we speak. Everywhere from Denmark to Italy to Spain to India to Australia to Canada, and then right here in the United States. This is why we have called it and coined it the world at war. It's a war that's not conventional. It's a war that has never been seen, written about, imagined by many. It has not. This is the new world war of the 21st century. Tonight we're going to have a look at all the protests, the struggles, the fight for freedom as it unfolds right before our eyes. To join me on this venture is our very own Detective Cagney, who has now come from the inner depths of silence as the world events unfold. Welcome back, Detective Cagney. Detective, it's good to see you back here on the main stage, and what a better and more appropriate time to return to the stage.
Been so busy, between traveling and following the news and doing some special investigations. It's really, really good to be back.
Well, it's good to have you back, and we're at a point now, just as things are moving, where as opposed to several months ago, it was pretty stale, wasn't it? It felt like we were treading water.
I think there was a period of time where you and I had a phone call and we said, well, we could do a late night, but boy, there's just really nothing going on in the news right now. Everything's quiet, and we were questioning, why is everything quiet? Well, I think the answers are here now.
They certainly are. Well, I want to get started tonight with a few things. We heard about Sri Lanka. Now, what do we know about Sri Lanka other than the fact it's close to India, and it took just a substantial beating just years ago when that massive tsunami of 2004 hit it? But that's kind of the last world news and headline news that we've heard about Sri Lanka. But what is happening in Sri Lanka that we know of right now?
Besides the fact that they ousted their prime minister / president.
At street level, security forces attempted to hold the line.
And they overtook his compound. And there were, thousands of people that went in there partying and destroying the property. And the fact that he tried then to escape Sri Lanka 3 times, and 3 times he was caught, they won't let him leave the country.
Well, that's just exactly it. Prime Minister Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he fled abroad, resigned after mass protest over the country's economic collapse. Now, we hear this and we say, okay, well, that's Sri Lanka. That's Sri Lanka. But there seems to be even more movement. Well, get this now. Farmers in Spain have now joined Italy, Poland, and the Netherlands in a mass European protest. That is now underway. Farmers in Spain have not only joined them, but they have led to many supermarkets running out of food because, Detective, they're doing what they call a culling. The chickens, the cows, they're all killing them in a mass fashion right now all over Europe. The outrage over new government regulations that will force them to reduce their nitrogen fertilizer compounds, leading to a reduced number of their livestock, ultimately causing bankruptcy for family-owned businesses. What do you think this really represents? Is it the end of, as we heard it, livestock meat? Or is it the beginning of a corporate Amazon-esque of food distribution throughout Europe?
No, I don't think it's either. I think that what it is it's the pushing everyone to the brink, because there's so many elections going on throughout the whole world. So what it's doing is it's angering a lot of people. And then if they can't eat, there's nothing that they can buy to eat. They're staying home more and trying to do whatever they can, because I know for a fact the inflation rates, for example, in Turkey, just for salaries alone, is over 60%. In Hungary, it's hovering around 18%. Italy is like 20%. Cost of living has increased so fast and so rapidly. And this is actually the first time, I don't know, in 30, 40 years that the euro and the dollar are match to match. And in India today, I believe the ruble dropped so low that it's the first time in their history it was ever that low against the dollar. So what they're doing is they're really pushing people. They can't live within their means. And then by killing the food, it's starting a worldwide panic. And that in itself is enough to distract everybody from the upcoming elections, because you're worrying about how you're going to feed your family rather than worrying about who's taking over, while all of these different countries have their prime ministers, presidents, et cetera, resigning.
They do. Okay, let's bank on that, because as we're talking about this, the Sri Lanka prime minister, the president, gone. That's not necessarily a headline news. It is it's on the front pages or in the first few pages of a major news cycle or newspaper, for that fact. But Bojo, Boris Johnson, now resigning out of the UK, just days and days and days ago, was a major shock for many. Just as we hear now the following: France is about to oust Macron, as he's now talking about France to turn off lights as Macron warns of energy problems ahead. Napoleon 2.0, Emmanuel Macron, has now warned his people of France to prepare for having the lights switched off, and they're all up in arms. And he's saying the following: we should prepare ourselves for the scenario where we have to go without all Russian gas.
Yeah, they're saying that not only in France, they're saying that everywhere. I mean, today in Hungary, they announced that they won't run out of gas, but the pricing is going to be so high come fall and winter. Now that's already on top of this massive increase in the cost of food and the lowering of the forint. I mean, I want to say that the Hungarian forint is somewhere around 407 to a USD. So that means that people, they just can't afford anything. So by having to charge more for gas, now you're going to have people in the winter that are going to be freezing to death. But this is all coming alongside, yes, the Boris is gone, and yes, Macron is probably going to go, but we had the resignation of the Estonian prime minister on top of the Italian prime minister have also left. So I think that there's a changing of the guards. Now, are they changing guards because they know that the cabal or the great reset is about to take place and they're about to lose everything and they don't want to be vindicated in that scenario? Or is it just that they feel their time is up? I mean, that's a it's a question for everyone.
And here's what's fascinating about this. This is all now happening on the heels of a very symbolic moment in world history, the Georgia Guidestones falling. Signify the ignition button has been pressed, and then so follows the resignation of Boris Johnson. So follows these massive protests around Europe with the farmers and so forth. Now, back to Bojo now resigning, and who do you think is going to be next on the chopping block?
I would wish that it was going to be Biden, but I'm sure that's my dream.
We're going to get to that. Yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute.
You know what? I don't know what it all symbolizes, except for the fact that everything's happening at once. So, as many people have speculated for the last 2 years that this has really been a movie playing out, and if it is, we're about to hit the climax here with all of these people leaving, and
I'm guessing you're currently in Sri Lanka joining the protesters.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, now I'm back. I'm sorry. This is symbolizing that there's a change coming, like we had said, that it's a movie playing out and we're climaxing here. It seems like people want to get out so that they don't get named as it comes further? I don't know if they're in hiding or where they're going. I mean, with these people that are leaving, are they fleeing their countries? Are they going into hiding? I mean, everything is so silent in many areas, especially in the US with top-notch people that we haven't heard from in a long time. But now you have these people that are exiting. Is everybody exiting and going silent? Or is it possible that there's been so many crimes against humanity that they're leaving because they're being taken, I don't know, to be destroyed after killing off parts of the population? I don't know, Dean.
Well, some of them, Detective, are not just exiting gracefully stage left. Some of them are getting, quote, assassinated, which then brings us to the assassination of Abe Shinzo, former Prime Minister of Japan and very close ally of the Trump administration at the time. What are your thoughts on that? Because the timing of it, the significance of it, and the mere fact that any firearms of any weaponry, for that fact, especially with an ex-prime minister with a very, very anomaly, red flag riddled narrative of how he died and who assassinated him.
I think this could possibly be what they're trying to show can happen as a warning signal, let's say, to the Patriots and or Trump that, hey, we can take anybody out. We just took this guy out, and this guy, the fact that he was friends or colleagues or work colleagues, whatever, he got along so well with Trump, perhaps they were trying to send a message to Trump. As we're also hearing, and you and I talked about this too, that Iran has supposedly ordered an assassination against Trump at this time. And this is already this is starting to hit mainstream. So if it's hitting mainstream, it could be BS. But just the fact that they're even saying that. So here we have the Japanese president ousted and murdered in the streets. And then next thing you know, that someone's threatening from Iran that they're going to take out Trump. So are they trying to do scare tactics? Perhaps.
Okay, let's talk about that, because Iran supposedly had a major trade agreement with the Trump administration prior to his exiting of the world stage in public affairs. And when you get right down to it, Iran has been posturing towards some kind of war conflict with Israel for the past several months, where it's increased its level of realistic wartime. But then you look who's behind Iran. And I have to say, and I come back to China, whose objective is to stick it to Israel, who shorthanded China in a major agreement in this bipolar, if you will, this multipolar world order, which placed China as number one as the beneficiaries of the Great Reset financially, and Israel is number two. There was a disagreement. There was a contract buster that we're aware of. And what better way to do what China always does best is use a proxy country to battle your wars, your conflicts. And I see that as what China's doing is using the Iran to put the pressure on not just Israel, but like you said, almost a de facto government, Trump. Why is Trump the man in the arena right now? And why is there now talks of continuity of government when we know now that that's what the TSA is training for, a national crisis?
Also, I think you have to keep in mind that this is just on the heels of Biden going to Saudi right now, which is a little strange that he suddenly has this urge to go to Saudi Arabia. So there's something happening over there in the Middle East with these countries and what's being discussed with Biden and his people. So yeah, it seems like there's like a plot, but I don't believe it will happen. I don't believe that they would really do that. I just think that they're trying to threaten Trump because Trump is about ready to announce 2024, right?
We can feel the winds of not just war making its way back here into our conscience, but we now have heard the trumpets of the political season 2024 reign again. So I have to ask, is that a now realistic possibility that's now coming to fruition, that he's going to announce the 2024 run? Is it just more smoke and mirrors? If so, Either or. How is this January 6th melee going to enhance, prevent, or overall destruct any possible return to the pathway to the White House?
Well, I don't think that January 6th is going to have any bearing on it whatsoever. I believe that that was all a power play. I believe people were put into place and things were done to bring out the proof that the other side was really corrupt. So things were staged to make people believe that it was the Trump people, but it's all going to come out in the wash. There's too much silence around the main characters of that day. And I believe it's because they're holding their cards to their chest and they're waiting for all the accusations and all the mistakes to be made in the hearings so that they then can come forth and lay out the actual facts.
Yeah, and it's the January 6th and any mention of it that is really getting people taken down left and right and left and right. And there's something that Stuart Rhodes did say to me in our most recent controversial interview. Here's what he told me. He said it doesn't matter that their ratings have plummeted and programs like golf are beating it in the Nielsen ratings. He said that doesn't matter. What matters is that they're pushing their narrative to the people that are making policy in the United States and to the jury of our so-called peers in the DC Beltway. Do you think that's true? Because if you just look at it from the ratings, there isn't even a mention or whisper of any of these things happening, I guarantee it, at your local donut shop and coffee shop around America.
Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. We know that it's, well, I think many people know that it's absolutely a joke. But again, I think it's like we're in the third act here. So they have to bring in a little twist to the plot. So they think that by bringing this in and trying to damn Trump with all of this, that it's going to make them look good. But every time they start trying to think that they're winning and they're making him look bad, they end up actually making themselves look bad. And that's why I say there's many players that are holding their cards to their chest and they're waiting until all the evidence is produced that the Democrats think that they have, and then the counter is going to come.
Okay, let's talk about the counter. Right now, there's three major superpowers I want to now include in this so-called counter. That's Russia, that's India, and that's China. We now have heard reports, seldom at that, of Russia in Nicaragua, and even reports of China there as well. They have been given free passageway by the Nicaraguan president over there in Central America. And I've yet to truly hear about the very silent and quiet India and what their posture is now going towards, and where their footsteps are leading to in this rebuttal, as you call it. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I think India is silent because right now they're going through famine and drought and in some areas, and then severe flooding in other areas. So right now they're knee deep in crap, so to speak, that's taking their center stage. Now, could it be that that was planned so that they couldn't get involved because they're not supposed to get involved just yet? That's chapter 4 of the book, and they're only on chapter 3. So India is not supposed to enter that stage yet. So I think the biggest question here is why are they sitting back? And again, I think that it's not their turn to play yet. But we have the Russia-Ukraine thing that was supposed to be over, and supposedly, I mean, I just have to laugh. I'm sorry, Dean. I just have to laugh at the way that they're playing this whole Ukraine thing, because everybody's sending these arms to them, supposedly, in tanks and all this jazz. And then they're trying to say that, this particular city that had nothing but civilians is taken out. But there's no proof. You aren't seeing anything really truthful on the news. They're not showing actual footage, but they're making people believe that this horrendous act is happening in the Ukraine, whereas because so much money laundering is going in there, they're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars there to launder it quickly before they get caught? Or is it just, again, a way for the good guys to push them into doing that, so that in the future, when we lay all the cards out, we're going to see that Ukraine really is another, I don't know, a player in, I want to say, Biden's pocket, just like
Could be.
like
Could
China.
be.
The United States and China, there is a lot to talk about. I'm very much looking forward to productive and constructive conversation. State Council.
States are two major countries, so it is necessary for the two countries to maintain a normal relationship. At the same time, through mutual joint efforts, push the relationship back to the right track.
We're hearing about a big event, something that is going to be, that happens in July, potentially, or beyond. In one of my interviews, James Martinez, he talked about a big event happening in July onwards. Many have said a Project Bluebeam, but he was kind of hinting towards a kind of a nuclear moment, which then leads into that big event. You brought to my attention what the East Coast is doing as we speak. So let's go over what the East Coast is doing in regards to this nuclear big event. And then let's go through a variety of different scenarios.
Well, when you think about the fact that the U.S. is really overstepping their bounds in the NATO realm and pushing Russia, Putin's not a guy to play with. And they keep threatening that they're going to shoot nuclear missiles at Moscow. They're going to take out Moscow. This is what the U.S. is saying. Well, Putin has long-range missiles too. So this is exactly what the U.S. wanted to hear, because then we could scare everybody on the East Coast. We could talk about taking out the majority of the East Coast with one or two pushes of the button from the Russian nuclear. And to prove that this is where the bad guys are going with this story, because they're scaring everybody, making them think Russia's this really bad guy, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to push the button, and whoop, there goes that whole section of the United States. All these people are going to be dead, to the point that now the malls on the East Coast are now having those stand-up instruction manuals at the mall entrances and spread throughout different malls and then in different cities on display on what to do if there is a nuclear missile fired at their neighborhood. And they're telling people, okay, first you have to seek shelter. 2, call your authorities. 3, make sure that you have food and water. Excuse me, the instructions are so ridiculous, because if it actually happened, it happened so quickly. Number one, all of the communications will be out. You will not be able to call anybody. You will not be able to run and escape it, because once the button's pushed, it's just a matter of minutes. You have no time to prepare. There's nothing you're going to do. And running into a shopping mall and hiding in the basement of the shopping mall is sure as hell not going to save you. But yet this is the scare tactics.
Yeah, and they're like, make sure all your lights are off, your shoes are tied.
Exactly.
And, that you
don't forget to feed the dog.
You don't forget to feed Fido. And okay, but so this is very reminiscent of the 1950s Red Scare. A majority of Americans doing nuclear bomb drills.
Dee-doo-dum-dum, dee-doo-dum-dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. And danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered, ducked and covered.
He did what we all must learn to do. You
and you
and you and you.
ducked and covered.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover.
Shed some light on what that was like, what that did to the psyche, and how that changed a whole generation of youth that had to grow up in that.
Well, I remember being in school, and we would have, you'd have fire drills or whatever, which was normal, but you always had the bomb drill. And what they would do is they would sound a siren in the school, and one of two things: if you could not exit into the corridor, if there was no windows there, then you could go to the corridor. If there were windows in the corridor of your classroom, then you had to immediately get under your desk and cover your head, but you had to stay under your desk, and you would have to hold that position for, I don't know, it felt like an eternity. It was probably 3 to 5 minutes. But as a child, when you're being told that there could be an incoming missile or nuke coming at you, and having to practice this, and you're 7 or 8 years old, it literally scares the hell out of you. And my mom actually had a supply of like bomb shelter kind of things in the basement.
And how long did this go on? How many years was this a factor in everyday lives of United States citizens?
Well, I recall it my entire grammar school. So I'm going to say, 6 to 8 years, something like that, where we had these, I don't know if it was weekly drills, that was quite some time ago. So I don't remember if it was weekly, was it monthly, but it was frequent. Now, we still have the tornado sirens here, but we still also have the emergency sirens that go off at 10:30 in the morning on Tuesdays, and it's the warning, and it runs for like 5 minutes, and it's so ear piercing, but the whole neighborhood could hear it. So that if that sound, as a child, I remember when we would hear that sound, then that meant you got to get in the basement or into a bomb shelter. People had freaking bomb shelters dug out in their backyard, stocked full of that army kind of ration foods, etc., that their family could live on for a couple of months in case this actually happened. So you grow up believing that this was really going to happen in the center of the United States. We were going to get hit with a nuke, and the Russians were coming, and you grew up really, really scared to death of it.
Yeah. When you say that set the precedent for young American men to willfully join the United States military, which got us into this war mentality, which paved the way for the Vietnam War. Would you say that was a major factor that played into the original popularity of such a war like that?
I would say yes, but I would say further, if this plan was actually going on, I mean, if they came up with the plan of a one world power, this wasn't something that was designed overnight. This is something that goes back to, I don't know, the 20s or 30s maybe. So by instilling this in people's minds in the 50s and 60s as children, whoever was growing up during those years, well, these people are now in their 60s, 60 to 70 range. And now when they're hearing about nuclear bombs, these people who would be possibly patriots, okay, would be then thinking, oh my God, everything that I learned as a child, it's now, 50 years later, 60 years later, it's actually coming to be, because look at this. We've got signs all over the place about how to take shelter. There's bomb shelters, go into the subways, et cetera, et cetera. And their largest nightmare as a child is now coming true as an older adult.
Let's get into the Taiwan factor. Taiwan seems to have now been put off the news cycle because of everything. It is the linchpin of a major conflict in the South China Sea that I have been staring at for 2.5 years now. Where are we on that? Because we hear about the biolabs in Ukraine. Well, they exist in Taiwan, and they also existed throughout Central America, which has been the central intelligence agencies, either retirement community or offset headquarters. So let's get into that, because that could be a major event that would ignite the overall world war and come to public, would it not?
It would, because then it forces everybody to decide if they're for or against China. So, you have people, again, when I go back to the scare factor for people on the nuclear things that are happening, thinking that they were siding with Russia, saying, well, Putin's just doing his job. So in order to get people to stop thinking that Putin might be a good guy, let's scare him with the nukes and then bring back those bad childhood memories. And therefore, never mind, I remember that we hate Russians as a child. That's one part of the scenario. The second part of the scenario is, if that's not working and it's not scaring enough people, well then, all right, let's start with the Taiwan thing, and then we can have a threat of going to war against China, or I don't even want to say China, I want to say CCP, because China's really not all that bad. It's a CCP that's the problem.
Right.
Right. So they could then produce a secondary scare. Oh my gosh, well, they have nukes too, so maybe we're going to get nuked from China, maybe we're going to get nuked from Russia, but we're all going to be burnt here.
Nuclear bombs seem like such an archaic method of war in this day and age. We know damn well that the the new weaponry of the 21st century is not even on any form of landmass per se. Well, it's in space. So when I hear nuclear, it's like saying that the big scare event in some regard is going to be at the hands in the barrel of a musket. But do you understand what I'm saying? There's an archaic kind of component to this nuclear talk when we know that EMPs, DEWs, and other weaponry and weather weapons are clearly being used and done, just not publicized on the front page of the New York Times. Do we see that now?
Yes, I agree with that. But then I have to ask you a question: is Trump still holding the football? Because who's got the codes to push the button? So if in fact any of this were to happen, are we to believe that Joe Biden would be the person that would decide whether or not the button's going to get pushed to fire back? Or is it a point in time where, since this is such a critical decision that would have to be made by a hopefully comprehensible president, does that mean that people will then realize that you can't have Joe Biden holding the ball here, the power codes? We have to revert back to who the real president is, no?
We see that happening. If this domino effect continues from Sri Lanka to UK, what seems to be France next, I think we can fully expect Canada to follow, Australia to follow, and ultimately the last checker in domino to fall, the US. And this puppetry president going c'est la vie, the cryptic clues are there. He's being referred to as, like Mr. Biden in newspapers. We see him at airports waiting to get in his Uber. There's no security detail that is surrounding him yet, nor are they concerned at all. So I think it's at this point in time, I think we're about to see a transition of power, hence the continuity of government talk. And not to mention, we have yet to hear about any of the big rulings or world events within the recent 6 months, dare I say more. We've yet to hear from Barack Obama publicly, like speaking, and I'm not talking about articles. We have yet to hear anyone stumping on a campaign trail, which should be happening by now for certain elements of this so-called deep state. We've yet to hear from Michelle Obama. We have yet to hear from a Hillary Clinton stump speech or anything of that nature. John Brennan, former head of the CIA, Gina Haspel, former head of the Central Intelligence, and other major players in the political spectrum, I have yet to see on a serious headline news stage. Have you?
No, not at all. But then, of course, we haven't heard from any of the other people that are key players on the Trump side either. We're not hearing from his main people. Everyone is quiet because we're watching the movie and we've got to wait till the next act.
They're also insulated too. They're also insulated, it appears. I mean, but then, this comes with very unfortunate, sad news of the passing of the Ivana Trump too, which they're saying she fell down a flight of stairs or she died in a very unusual nature in her home. That is very telling too. What happened to her?
Telling. It's telling, but the question here is, did something happen to her? Okay, I'm not saying she didn't fall, but maybe she was pushed and there's no evidence of it just yet. But in any case, are they trying to flush Trump out? Because if there is a funeral, of course, he would be there with his kids. And are they trying to flush him out so they can bring him really into the public eye for a possible assassination?
Very, very key. That's something to look into indeed. Well, let's kind of in closing here, because this is so massive. I mean, we might have to just really do these almost like weekly at this point, because the world is changing just by the minutes here. Let's kind of cap it off here. What can we expect here as we now go into another chapter of this pandemic war? Because this can go just a whole host of different avenues, in ways, a whole host of many different ways here. What do you see coming here in this next chapter of this pandemic war, Detective?
Well, I want to liken it to a Broadway play and say this, that it's intermission, time to go out and get your soft drink while they change the scenery. And then once the scenery changes, the next act is going to start. And I think it's going to be the second half of this play is going to be the play out where everyone sees exactly what happened. And had they not had all these dilemmas, all these horrible things, even COVID, et cetera, all of these bad things that have been happening, enough people wouldn't have realized what a sad state the entire world was in, because truthfully, I bet you most of your audience was not aware of all these different things that were happening that you and I've talked about in the past. For example, South America, Middle America, Costa Rica, we can go on and on. People were not paying attention because people they get their blinders on. They're looking in their own neighborhood and worrying about what's going on in the backyard, and they don't see what's happening. But this has brought to light everything that is going on worldwide for the first time in 30 years.
Yeah, this is huge. This is the world of war. Yeah, this is just a very this is biblical, as many have described it, but that is a very good point. And I'm very proud at for the fact that we can present this to a Western audience that needs to hear what's being blocked from their eyes and from their ears. So it's very crucial what we're touching upon this evening. But Detective Cagney, I want to thank you for joining me here tonight at Late Night Update. But real quick, if you can tell people right now, should we be optimistic or should we be pessimistic? Real quick.
No, I think optimism is key. I believe that there will be a good ending, but I also believe that a lot of people are going to be so shocked that they're not going to be able to believe. I mean, I actually potentially see that people could be jumping off buildings because they're not going to believe what they're going to hear. Because through the revelation of all of this, I believe the truth is going to come out about even 9/11, and people are just going to be sickened to find out what really, really, truly has been going on and the games that have been played by the people that are trying to take over the world power.
I also, I think the truth's going to come out about the miracle jabs, and I think that people are going to go ape shit and totally lose it.
Yep.
So I think that's what we're about to embark onto. And just for safety concerns, can we assure the audience that you're not doing this interview right now underneath the desk?
I can't promise that.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Right. No.
All right. Just got to make sure. Just doing a welfare check. Thank you, Detective Cagney, for your time. We will be hearing more and more from you as this world turns and we sit here as spectators, but not as footnotes, but as footprints in this ever so changing world. Thank you, Detective Cagney.
Thank you, Dean.
Well, there you have it. As the world turns, we're not just spectators. We are making headway into a new type of world, a resurgence, a new enlightenment. But like many have said, you got to crawl before you can walk, and darkness before the light. So I'm going to be here at my war post that I have promised to be at since March of 2020 and see this thing through, guide us all through it together as this movement we have built around the world. So I want to thank Detective Cagney for joining us here tonight. And I want to thank all of you for keeping your eyes open and your ears very, very wide open as well, because there is so much information coming down the rabbit hole and the pikeway. It's hard to really just get a true grasp and grip on it all. But that's what we do around here. So until next time, I'm Dean Ryan, reminding you to always remember to stay tuned, stay awake.